There were days when, as soon as my dad's footsteps faded out the door, darkness didn't just fall over the house, it swallowed my heart. I was just a 16-year-old girl, small and invisible, trapped in a home where the people who should have loved me the most made me feel like I didn't belong. My mom and brother weren't protectors. They were my tormentors, using their words and actions to push me down, to break me bit by bit. I tried so hard to be the daughter my mom wanted, a mirror of my brother, her golden child. But no matter what I did, no matter how much I changed, I was always the wrong one. The constant criticism, the ugly comparisons, the endless chores they dumped onto me, they crushed my spirit every single day. But what if I told you there was a moment when I decided enough was enough? A moment when I captured the truth on camera, and one video changed everything. Could that video be the key to breaking free from years of pain? To finally being seen, heard, and protected? Before we dive into this, please drop a comment and let us know which city you're watching from. Enjoy the video. This is my story, a journey tangled in love, pain, hope, and heartbreak. Join me as I take you through the shadows of my past and the light I fought so hard to find. Growing up in my family felt like walking a tightrope stretched impossibly thin, with no safety net beneath. My mother's love, or what little there was of it, was never meant for me. From the very beginning, it was clear she had a favorite, my older brother. To her, he was perfect, charming, athletic, smart, and unconditionally adored. Meanwhile, I was the shadow, the inconvenient shadow she never asked for. I was just the echo of her disappointment, the reminder of what she hadn't wanted. At school, when other kids talked about their families with warm smiles, I swallowed the bitter truth that at home, I was invisible, except when they needed someone to blame or boss around. My mother never bothered to hide it. Her favorite was obvious in the way she praised my brother's every achievement, every goal scored, every good grade, while any success of mine was met with a sigh or a sharp criticism. I still remember the sting of those moments, when I stood beside her son trying to mimic him, hoping that if I acted like him, sounded like him, maybe she would see me differently. But her gaze always slid past me, settling only on him, the golden boy. Anything I did that resembled him only seemed to aggravate her more. I felt so alone, not just because of the silence, but because the one person who was supposed to hold me close made sure I never felt wanted. My mom would pick apart my appearance, mocking my skinny frame and glasses. "Why can't you be more like your brother?" she'd say, like a bitter echo in my ears that never faded. She'd force-feed me plates piled high with meat, warning that I'd never be desirable otherwise. The cruel irony was that I didn't hate my body until she turned it into a battlefield. There were days I wore my brother's baggy old clothes, hiding not just my figure, but the hurt inside. I learned to shrink away, to make myself small enough to be overlooked. But inside, the pain brewed, a mixture of rejection, confusion, and a desperate longing for a mother's love I felt I'd never earn. Then there was my father, my quiet solace in the storm. Unlike my mother, he never demanded I be anyone but myself. He treated me with respect and kindness, never comparing me to my brother. His love was a lifeline, but his absences, long work trips that seemed endless, left me exposed to the relentless waves of neglect and cruelty when he was gone. My brother was not an enemy, at least not entirely. Sometimes, I saw cracks in his armor too. A boy caught between a mother's favoritism and his own guilt. He'd occasionally glance my way with pity or fleeting kindness, but most times, he followed my mother's lead, their cruelty intertwining like a twisted alliance. It was this tangled triangle that shaped my childhood: favoritism, loneliness, and silent suffering. My closest friend, Emma, was the only light outside the walls of that house. She never assumed my life was easy, never judged the bruises she couldn't see. Sometimes, after school, I'd lay bare the tangled mess of feelings with her, voice trembling, pretending that the family I longed for existed somewhere else. Emma was more than a friend. She was my witness, my sanity. Yet, every night, I returned to that house with the same sinking feeling, knowing that between those walls, I was still the unwanted girl. But deep down, something inside me whispered that I deserved better. That I was more than what my mother and brother made me feel. This suffocating loneliness, this invisible pain, it was the silence before the storm, the quiet before I'd finally decide to fight back. And that fight would begin with a glimmer of hope I never expected. When my dad left for work trips, that's when the house became a battlefield. The warmth I briefly felt in his presence vanished like smoke, leaving me exposed to the harsh coldness of my mother and brother's daily attacks. It was a cruelty that wasn't shouted out loud but carved into me with every word, every glance, every sneer. They'd whip up lists of chores as if I were some invisible servant tethered to their every whim. "Do this now," my mother barked one day as I collapsed from exhaustion after school. My brother stood beside her smirking, enjoying the power they wielded together. If I protested, they called me lazy, ungrateful, pathetic. "You'll never amount to anything. Just stick to cleaning if that's all you can do," my brother sneered once, his voice cutting deeper than any slap. This wasn't just about chores. It was about control, about breaking me piece by piece until I stopped fighting. Every refusal, every plea was met with cold indifference or cruel retorts. Each day, I felt myself shrinking, my hopes dimming, my spirit battered. But the worst wounds were invisible. At school, I excelled academically. I was in advanced classes, pushing myself harder to find a place where I belonged. Yet the mounting pressure at home spilled into my grades. Late nights spent scrubbing floors left me bleary-eyed and drained. The weight of unfinished homework piled alongside mountains of laundry. I remember the sting of my first C, a mark that felt less like failure and more like a scar etched by exhaustion and unfairness. My teachers noticed the change, their brows knitting in concern, but I kept my silence. How could I explain this invisible war? How could I confess I was drowning in a sea of silent demands and bruising words, all from those who should have been my safe harbor? Even my closest friends, like Emma, only saw the surface, the tired eyes, the forced smile. They didn't know the daily battles I faced behind closed doors. Occasionally, moments of kindness would flicker from my brother, rare and fleeting, like a candle's glow in a vast dark room. But those moments were prey to my mother's watchful eyes and faded quickly, swallowed up again by the harsh reality of favoritism and control. There were nights when I'd lie awake staring at the ceiling, my mind swirling with questions that had no answers. Why was I the target? What had I done to deserve this? Each question a loop of despair, yet beneath it all, a stubborn flicker of resilience, something that whispered, "This isn't the end." It was within this relentless storm of bullying and pressure that I learned the harshest truths about family, survival, and myself. I realized that silence was a shackle, and survival meant finding a way to break free. And so, I began to search for that sliver of light beyond the shadows of my home, something to hold on to, something to give me hope. That hope came unexpectedly, in a place I never thought to look. It was rare for me to find anything that felt like it belonged to just me, something I could claim as my own. Until the day I stepped into the swimming pool for the very first time, hesitating at the edge like a child standing before an unknown world. Water had always scared my mother, and so it never even crossed her mind that I might want to try it. But something inside me, a quiet voice buried beneath years of doubt and pain, whispered, maybe this could be different. The first plunge was more than physical. It was symbolic, a step away from the suffocating shadow I was trapped in. As I learned to float, to glide, and then to swim, I began to taste freedom. Each stroke was a declaration. I was more than what they said I was. More than the girl hidden behind baggy clothes and quiet tears. My coach, Mrs. Helen, noticed something in me before anyone else did. "You've got a natural rhythm," she told me after practice one day, her voice warm and encouraging. That simple kindness was like oxygen to my starving heart. For once, someone believed in me, not because I looked the part or lived up to a standard, but just because of who I was. My teammates became a new kind of family. They celebrated every small victory, never compared me to others, and pushed me to believe I could get better. Even Emma cheered me on, proud to see me light up for the first time in years. With swimming, my body began to change in ways I hadn't thought possible. The muscles I once lacked slowly formed beneath my skin, and with every pound gained, my confidence grew. It wasn't about fitting anyone's ideals anymore. It was about my own strength, my own joy. Yet, this newfound strength didn't go unnoticed at home, and it certainly wasn't welcomed. My mother's critical eyes darkened every time I walked past, slimmer and stronger than before. My brother rolled his eyes, muttering snide comments when he thought I couldn't hear. They lost their easiest targets, the petty jabs about my body, the vicious remarks about my ugliness. So, they shifted tactics. The bullying changed shape, but never truly disappeared. They began demanding more chores, expecting me to be their personal servant whenever Dad was away. The Cinderella treatment, as I harshly named it behind closed doors. But amidst the storm, I clung to the pool, to the water that made me feel alive and untouchable. Swimming wasn't just a sport. It was my sanctuary, my rebellion, and finally, my voice. And from that sanctuary, my mind began to plan. I knew I couldn't live like this forever. I had to make a choice, to keep hiding or to fight back and reclaim my life. The weight of silence had become unbearable. Every day, every moment I spent under my mother and brother's cold tyranny chipped away at me, eroding the hope I had fought so hard to build. One afternoon, after finishing an exhausting mountain of chores that left me too drained to focus on my advanced schoolwork, a crushing realization hit me. I could no longer bear this alone. It was time to stop hiding, to stop pretending. I wasn't sure how to begin, how to make sure my father would understand the truth, a truth concealed beneath years of smiles, deceptions, and carefully crafted lies. That's when I made the decision. I would record them, capture every cruel word, every unfair command. I would gather the evidence that my voice alone could not convey. Setting up my phone, hiding the lens in the corner of my room, I felt my heart pounding with every knock and every harsh word thrown my way. My mother barged in with her usual demands, my brother quick to chime in with biting insults. They didn't know I was watching, and for the first time, I held power, not over them, but over the truth. When the video was finally sent to my dad, my hands trembled, both from fear and a newfound strength. I braced for disbelief, for betrayal, for the possibility that even he might dismiss what I was telling him. But instead, his reply was swift and protective. A command to lock myself away, a promise that he was coming home immediately. Hearing his car pull into the driveway was a mix of relief and dread. I hid quietly, listening to the heated confrontation unfolding outside my room. His voice was sharp, demanding answers, breaking through the facade my mother and brother had created. Pleas turned into accusations, apologies dissolved into harsh truths. I stayed silent, overwhelmed but resolute. Then, I heard the sound I'd longed for but never truly expected, my mother packing, sobbing hysterically, forced to leave with my brother. The house, once suffocating, felt different, quieter in a way that hinted at change. My father found me then, his eyes heavy with exhaustion and heartbreak. "You're safe now," he whispered. Those words became my anchor. For the first time, I felt a flicker of peace in a world that had been filled with storm. But even as relief washed over me, the path ahead was anything but smooth. What lay beyond this moment of confrontation would test the limits of our family's bonds and challenge everything I thought I knew. The storm had passed, but the aftermath left me swirling in a sea of emotions I couldn't easily navigate. Relief mixed with guilt. Freedom tangled with loneliness. My mother and brother were gone, yet their shadows lingered, etched into every corner of my heart and mind. The phone calls from my grandparents were the first blow. Their voices, sharp and accusing, echoed through the receiver like thunder. "You're a curse on this family," they spat, blaming me for the collapse of what they called a perfect life. They said I was ungrateful, that my mother had risked everything bringing me into this world. only for me to betray her. Each word landed like a knife, twisting the pain deeper. For a moment, I questioned myself. Was I really the villain they painted me to be? But there was my dad, the one person who stood steady amid the chaos. When he looked at me, I didn't see disappointment or blame, only love and sorrow. He carried his own pain, a heavy burden of regret for not seeing it sooner, for not protecting me better. Still, he never wavered in his belief that I deserved safety and happiness. We shared quiet dinners filled with silence more than words, both of us healing in our own ways. Yet beneath that silence was a growing bond, fragile but real. Sometimes he'd break down, revealing his heartbreak, and I'd try to be strong for him, even when I felt fragile myself. Therapy was his suggestion, and at first I hesitated. Admitting I wasn't okay felt like surrender. But slowly, I began to understand that healing wasn't about weakness. It was about courage, the courage to face the pain, to untangle the knots of years spent in silence. In our sessions together, the walls between us started to crumble. We spoke of fears, of regrets, of hopes. The man who once seemed so distant became my greatest ally, and I, in turn, found the strength to rebuild not just myself, but our relationship from the ground up. Outside these walls, the world went on. School, friends like Emma who cheered quietly from afar, and the small moments of normalcy reminded me there was life beyond the hurt. But the hardest battle was still inside, learning to let go of guilt, to release the chains of the past. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was becoming the author of my own story, writing each chapter with more resilience and hope than the last. The days following that stormy chapter were quiet, almost eerily so. My mother and brother had left, packing their bags with little more than anger and silence. The house felt spacious, but also hollow, as if it were waiting for a new story to unfold within its walls. Therapy became my lifeline. Twice a week, I met with Dr. Collins, a kind woman whose patience and quiet strength gently coaxed my tangled emotions to the surface. At first, I floundered. Words felt heavy, memories sharp and unwelcome. But gradually, I learned to untangle the knots of pain and betrayal that had bound me for so long. She helped me name the fears hiding in my heart, the guilt I carried for breaking my family apart, the years of feeling like less than enough, the anger simmering beneath my calm exterior. In time, I started attending sessions with my dad, too. Our joint therapy was awkward at first. Unspoken hurt lingered between us, the scars of years lost to silence. But each meeting chipped away at the wall of unshared pain. I saw a side of my dad I hadn't known, his own regrets, his fierce desire to protect me now more than ever. And he saw my quiet strength, the fierce determination that had carried me through. Outside the therapy room, life began to glow with new colors. My body, once frail and weak, grew stronger with swimming. My mind, once clouded with doubt, began to clear. Friends like Emma and my coach, Mrs. Helen, became pillars of encouragement, their faith in me fueling my own. Yet healing was not a straight path. There were days I doubted myself, moments when old voices tried to pull me back into darkness. The phone calls from my grandparents, the memories of harsh words, the loneliness of rebuilding from ruins, they all tested the fragile peace I was building. But with every challenge, I reminded myself, I am not the child they refuse to see. I am the woman choosing to rise, to rewrite my story with courage and grace. My father and I now share not just a house, but a partnership, a new family stitched together from the fragments of broken trust, woven with threads of love, hope, and resilience. The divorce papers have been signed, closing one painful chapter, and opening the door to the future I dared to dream of. As I look forward, I see a horizon not defined by pain, but by possibility. I am reclaiming my voice, my power, and, most importantly, myself. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. Your support means the world to me. If you found this story meaningful, Please give it a like, share it with anyone who might relate, and subscribe to the channel for more heartfelt stories like this. Don't forget to leave a comment below. Your thoughts and feedback help us grow and create content that truly resonates. Together, we can build a community of understanding and strength. Thank you again for being here.